Pain shot through Marcus Grayson's chest like lightning as the helicopter blades whirred overhead. 1 minute he'd been delivering a keynote at his company's annual investor meeting. The next he was collapsing to his knees, unable to breathe. Now, strapped to a gurney in an emergency airlift, the 41-year-old tech mogul realized with startling clarity that all his billions couldn't buy him another heartbeat. BP's dropping. "We need to move faster," a paramedic shouted over the roar of the helicopter. Marcus tried to focus on the blue sky above him as they rushed him from the helipad into Manhattan Memorial Hospital. The fluorescent lights of the emergency department ceiling blurred above him, punctuated by the concerned faces of medical staff. "Aortic dissection, likely type A," someone called out, "or 3 is prepped and waiting." Marcus felt a warm hand squeeze his. He turned his head slightly to see a woman with striking amber eyes looking down at him. Her dark hair was pulled back into a tight bun, and despite the chaos around them, her expression was steady, focused. "Mr. Grayson, I'm Dr. Taylor Scott. I'll be performing your surgery today. I need you to stay with me, okay?" Her voice was clear and confident. "You're having a tear in your aorta and we need to repair it immediately." Marcus tried to respond, but the pain was overwhelming. All he could manage was a slight nod. "Good," Dr. Scott said. "We're going to take excellent care of you." Those were the last words Marcus heard before the anesthesia took him under. 12 hours later, Marcus opened his eyes to the soft beeping of monitors. His throat felt raw, his chest like it had been split open and sewn back together, which, he would later learn, was exactly what had happened. "Welcome back," came a familiar voice. Dr. Scott stood at the foot of his bed, reviewing his chart. Her hair was down now, falling in waves past her shoulders, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. "Have you been here the whole time?" Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. She nodded. "Your surgery was complex. I wanted to monitor your initial recovery personally." She moved to his side, checking the monitors. "How's your pain level on a scale of 1 to 10? 8, he admitted, "but I've had worse days on Wall Street." A small smile crossed her face. "I doubt that, Mr. Grayson. You just had major cardiac surgery. Your heart literally stopped for a period during the procedure." The gravity of his situation hit him. "So you're saying you've seen my heart?" "I've held it in my hands," she replied. "And it's surprisingly strong for someone who, according to your medical history, subsists primarily on coffee and stress." Despite the pain, Marcus felt himself smile. "I'll have you know I also occasionally eat a salad." "Once a quarter doesn't count," Dr. Scott said, making a note in his chart. "You're going to need to make some serious lifestyle changes, Mr. Grayson." "Marcus," he corrected her. "I think once you've had your hands inside my chest cavity, we should be on a first-name basis." "Fair enough, I'm Taylor," she checked his Roman 4 line. "You're incredibly lucky, Marcus. If you hadn't been at that hospital fundraiser when the symptoms started, if the helicopter hadn't been available so quickly." She left the sentence unfinished, but he understood. "I guess the $5 million I donated to your cardiac unit last year paid off in unexpected ways," he said. Taylor raised an eyebrow. "Is that supposed to be a joke?" "Sorry, inappropriate humor is how I deal with trauma." "Well, find a healthier coping mechanism," she said firmly. "You're going to be here for at least a week, possibly longer depending on your recovery." A week. Marcus tried to sit up but was immediately overcome with pain. "I can't. I have meetings, a company to run, you have a body to heal," Taylor interrupted. "And if you don't let it, you won't have to worry about those meetings ever again." Their eyes locked, and Marcus saw something in her gaze that made him relent. It wasn't just professional concern, there was something personal there, something that made him want to listen to her. "Fine," he said. 1 week. "We'll see," she replied, clearly unconvinced by his sudden compliance. "Get some rest. I'll check on you later." As Taylor left the room, Marcus found himself watching her go, wondering about the woman who had just saved his life. The next morning, Marcus woke to find his chief operations officer, James, sitting beside his bed, laptop open. "The board is freaking out," James said without preamble. "Stock dropped 4% when news of your health incident hit the wire. I've managed to keep the details quiet, but we need a statement from you." Marcus sighed. Just tell them I'm fine, routine procedure. I'll be back in the office next week. Mr. Grayson, Taylor's voice came from the doorway. She stood there with her arms crossed, wearing navy blue scrubs under her white coat. That would be a lie, and I'm ethically obligated to prevent my patients from making decisions that could kill them. James looked between them, confused. And you are, Dr. Scott, the cardiothoracic surgeon who saved your boss's life yesterday. She walked over to the bed and checked Marcus's monitors, and the person who will not be signing discharge papers next week. Taylor, Marcus started, Dr. Scott, she corrected, raising an eyebrow. In front of your employees, I think we should maintain professional boundaries. Something about her tone made Marcus's heart monitor beep slightly faster, a fact that did not go unnoticed by Taylor, who glanced at the screen with a knowing look. James, give us a minute, Marcus said after James left, looking thoroughly bewildered. Marcus turned to Taylor. I appreciate your concern, but my company needs me. Your company needs you alive, she countered. Look, I get it. You're used to being in control, making the decisions, telling everyone what to do. But right now in this hospital, that's my job. She softened her tone. Marcus, you nearly died. Your aorta, the main artery from your heart, was literally tearing apart. You need time to heal. Marcus studied her face. He wasn't used to being told what to do, but there was something about Taylor Scott that made him want to listen. Maybe it was the way she spoke with such conviction, or maybe it was just that he owed her his life. 3 weeks, she continued. That's the minimum recovery time before you can even think about returning to work, and even then it should be part-time. You'll need cardiac rehab, medication management, and follow-up scans. 3 weeks, Marcus repeated, the words feeling foreign on his tongue. He couldn't remember the last time he'd taken more than 2 days off work. Yes, and that's non-negotiable. Taylor checked his incision. The good news is that the surgery went well. If you follow my instructions, you should make a full recovery. And if I don't, Taylor met his gaze directly. Then I can't guarantee you'll be alive for your next board meeting. The bluntness of her statement should have angered him, but instead, Marcus found himself respecting her honesty. You're not very good at sugarcoating things, are you, Dr. Scott? Not with matters of life and death, no. She finished checking his dressings. Now, I believe you have a statement to make to your board. May I suggest one that acknowledges the severity of your condition while reassuring them that you're in good hands and will be back when medically cleared? That actually sounds reasonable. I have my moments. A smile played at the corners of her mouth. Oh, and limit your work calls to 30 minutes a day. Your heart needs rest, not stress. You're killing me, Marcus groaned. Quite the opposite, actually, Taylor replied, her amber eyes meeting his. I'm trying to keep you alive, Mr. Grayson, even if it means protecting you from yourself. After she left, Marcus found himself smiling despite the pain and restrictions. There was something refreshing about someone treating him like a normal person rather than a billionaire to be impressed or placated. The days that followed fell into a routine. Taylor would check on him during morning rounds, sometimes accompanied by residents who looked at Marcus with barely concealed curiosity. In the afternoons, she often returned alone to monitor his progress more personally. Marcus learned that Taylor was 38, had graduated top of her class at Johns Hopkins, and had chosen cardiothoracic surgery after her father died of an aortic aneurysm when she was in medical school. So that's why you took such a personal interest in my case, Marcus said on his 4th day in the hospital. They were playing chess on a magnetic travel set his assistant had brought in. Taylor moved her knight, capturing his bishop. Partly, she admitted. But mainly because your case was fascinating from a surgical perspective. The tear extended into your aortic arch, which made the repair exceptionally challenging. She looked up from the board. Check. Marcus focused on the game, moving his king out of danger. You know, most people don't talk to me like you do. Like what? A normal human being? Taylor took a sip of her coffee. Exactly. They're either intimidated by my money or trying to get something from me. Well, I'm neither intimidated nor impressed by your bank account. She studied the board. Though I am impressed by your chess skills, most of my patients can barely remember the rules when they're on this much pain medication. I played competitively in college, Marcus admitted. Before I dropped out to start my first company. Of course you did. Taylor moved her queen. Checkmate. Marcus stared at the board in disbelief. That's impressive. I played competitively through med school, she countered with a smile. Helps with surgical planning, thinking several moves ahead. Their eyes met across the board, and Marcus felt something shift between them. It wasn't just respect for her medical skills anymore, it was something more personal. The moment was interrupted when a nurse entered to check his vitals. Taylor stood, suddenly professional again. Your progress is good, she said, reviewing the nurse's notes. If things continue this way, we might move you out of ICU tomorrow. Does that mean I get to walk around a bit more? Marcus asked. Yes, but with assistance, Taylor emphasized. No solo adventures. Yes, doctor, he replied with a mock salute. Taylor rolled her eyes, but he caught her smile as she left the room. The next day, Marcus was moved to a private recovery room with a view of the Manhattan skyline. The physical therapist had him walking short distances in the hallway, which exhausted him more than he'd like to admit. By evening, he was seated in a chair by the window, watching the city lights come alive, when Taylor knocked on his open door. She was dressed in street-clothes jeans and a simple blue sweater with her hospital ID clipped to her belt. Her hair was loose around her shoulders, and Marcus was struck by how different she looked outside of her professional persona. I thought you'd gone home, he said. End of shift. Just wanted to check on you before I left. She walked in and checked his latest vitals on the chart. How are you feeling about being out of the ICU? Like I've been promoted to a slightly larger prison cell, he joked. Taylor raised an eyebrow. Most people would be grateful for a room that costs more per night than many New Yorkers make in a week. You're right, Marcus conceded. Sorry. I'm just not good at being idle. You're not idle, you're healing. There's a difference. Taylor sat in the chair across from him. Your body is working incredibly hard right now. Marcus nodded, studying her face in the soft evening light. Why did you really come by? Your shift is over. You could have checked my chart in the morning. Taylor seemed surprised by the question. She was quiet for a moment before answering. I guess I wanted to make sure you were adjusting okay. The move from ICU can be disorienting for some patients. That's very dedicated of you. It's my job. No, Marcus said softly. Your job ended when you signed off your shift. This is something else. Taylor met his gaze, and for a moment neither spoke. The city lights twinkled behind them, casting a warm glow across the room. Maybe I've gotten used to our chess games, she finally said, breaking the tension. The other doctors aren't nearly as challenging. Is that so? Marcus couldn't help smiling. Well, I'd hate to deprive you of a worthy opponent. She laughed, a genuine sound that made something warm unfurl in his chest. I should go, it's late and you need your rest. As she stood to leave, Marcus caught her hand. The touch was brief but electric. Thank you, Taylor, not just for the surgery, but for treating me like a person. She looked down at their hands, then back at his face. You are a person, Marcus, a stubborn, workaholic person with a remarkable heart both literally and figuratively. After she left, Marcus watched the door for a long time, wondering when exactly Dr. Taylor Scott had gone from being his surgeon to being someone he looked forward to seeing each day. The following week brought significant improvements in Marcus's physical condition. His incision was healing well, and he was walking longer distances each day. What hadn't improved was his restlessness. Despite Taylor's restrictions, he'd managed to smuggle in a tablet and was secretly working on company business when she wasn't around. What's this? Taylor asked one afternoon, picking up his tablet from where he'd hastily tucked it beneath his blanket. Entertainment, Marcus lied unconvincingly. Taylor swiped the screen awake, revealing a spreadsheet filled with financial projections. Ah yes, nothing more entertaining than quarterly revenue forecasts. She fixed him with a stern look. We had an agreement. Technically, you made a declaration and I nodded while heavily medicated, Marcus countered. Your heart rate has been elevated all morning, Taylor said. Now I know why. Stress is not part of your recovery plan, Marcus sighed. I can't just disconnect from my company, Taylor. It's not just about money. People's livelihoods depend on the decisions I make. Taylor sat on the edge of his bed, her expression softening. I understand that better than you might think. Every decision I make affects whether someone lives or dies. But I also know that I can't be an effective surgeon if I don't take care of myself. It's different, Marcus insisted. You have other surgeons who can step in. My company is built around my vision. And what happens to that vision if you work yourself into another aortic dissection? Taylor challenged. What happens to all those people who depend on you if you're dead? The bluntness of her question left Marcus without a retort. She was right, and they both knew it. Look, Taylor continued more gently, I'm not saying you can never work again. I'm saying you need to create space for your body to heal now so you can have a future to work in. Their eyes met, and Marcus saw genuine concern in hers. It wasn't just professional obligation, she cared about him. The realization made his heart rate increase slightly. A change immediately registered on the monitor beside him. Taylor glanced at the screen, then back at him, a knowing look crossing her face. Interesting. What's interesting? Marcus asked, though he suspected he knew. Your heart rate just increased, but you're perfectly still. She held his gaze. Care to explain that physiological response, Mr. Grayson? Marcus felt a warmth creeping up his neck. Must be a machine malfunction. The machines don't malfunction in my hospital, Taylor said with a small smile. She stood up, still holding his tablet. I'm confiscating this until tomorrow, doctor's orders. As she walked to the door, Marcus called after her, You know, most people would consider this theft of private property. Taylor turned, her amber eyes twinkling with amusement. And most doctors would consider this saving a stubborn patient from himself. I'll bring it back tomorrow along with a chess set. Perhaps a proper challenge will keep your mind off work for a while. After she left, Marcus found himself smiling despite the loss of his tablet. He couldn't remember the last time someone had challenged him so directly, or the last time he'd enjoyed being challenged this much. The next day, true to her word, Taylor returned with his tablet and a proper chess set. They played for nearly an hour, their conversation flowing easily from healthcare policy to technology trends to favorite books. You're not what I expected, Marcus admitted as Taylor captured his queen. What did you expect? She asked, rearranging the pieces for another game. I don't know. The brilliant surgeons I've met before tend to have god complexes. They're skilled but cold. You're different. Taylor considered this. Maybe because I know what it's like to be on the other side. When my father died, the surgeon was brilliant but detached. He treated my dad like an interesting case, not a person. I promised myself I'd never be that kind of doctor. Marcus studied her face, struck by the passion in her voice. Your patients are lucky to have you, even when I'm confiscating their electronics and forcing them to play chess. She asked with a smile, especially then. Marcus replied, his voice softer than intended. Something shifted in the air between them, a tension that hadn't been there before. Taylor looked away first, focusing on setting up the chess pieces. Your next scan is tomorrow, she said, changing the subject. If it looks good, we can discuss discharge planning. You mean I might get out of here soon? Marcus couldn't hide his excitement. Don't get too excited. You'd be going home with strict limitations and a home health nurse to keep you in line. As long as it's not you following me around my penthouse, telling me what I can and can't do, Marcus joked. Taylor's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. No, it won't be me. Once you're discharged, you'll see me for follow-up appointments, but your day-to-day care will transfer to others. Marcus hadn't considered that discharge would mean seeing less of Taylor. The thought bothered him more than he wanted to admit. I guess that means I should enjoy beating you at chess while I can, he said, trying to keep his tone light. Taylor seemed to sense the shift in his mood. Don't worry, Mr. Grayson, I'll still be keeping a close eye on your recovery. You're not getting rid of me that easily. The scan the next day showed excellent progress. The surgical repair was holding well, and Marcus's heart function was steadily improving. Taylor delivered the news with professional satisfaction, but Marcus thought he detected a hint of something else in her expression, perhaps regret that his hospital stay was coming to an end. So when do I get my walking papers? He asked as they reviewed the scan images together. I think we can aim for discharge in 3 days, Taylor replied, assuming you continue to progress well and promise to follow your outpatient care plan to the letter. I promise, Marcus said solemnly, raising his right hand as if taking an oath. Taylor laughed. Somehow I don't quite believe you. I'm wounded by your lack of trust, Dr. Scott. No, you were wounded by an aortic dissection, Mr. Grayson. Your trustworthiness remains intact but questionable. Their banter had become familiar over the past 2 weeks, a highlight of Marcus's days that he wasn't ready to give up. He watched as Taylor made notes in his chart, wondering how to maintain their connection outside the hospital walls. Will you have dinner with me? He asked suddenly. Taylor looked up, clearly surprised. What? After I'm discharged and recovered enough, will you have dinner with me, not as my doctor, but just as Taylor? She studied his face for a long moment. Marcus, I don't think that would be appropriate. I'm still your physician. But you won't be forever, he pointed out. Once I'm fully recovered and officially released from your care. Taylor hesitated, and Marcus could see her weighing professional ethics against personal feelings. Let's focus on getting you discharged first, she finally said. We can revisit this conversation later. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. Marcus decided to count it as progress. The next 3 days passed quickly. Marcus diligently followed every instruction, determined to show Taylor that he could be a model patient. By the time his discharge day arrived, he was both eager to return to his own space and reluctant to leave the hospital that had unexpectedly become the site of a significant shift in his life's priorities. Taylor came to his room early that morning, discharge papers in hand. She was in full professional mode, reviewing his medication schedule and follow-up appointments. Your first checkup is in 1 week, she said, handing him a folder of information. Until then, the home health nurse will visit daily. Her name is Nurse Chen, and she has direct access to me if there are any concerns. Marcus nodded, taking the folder. And what about that conversation we were going to revisit? Taylor paused, her professional demeanor slipping just slightly. Marcus, I know, he said quickly. You're still my doctor, but I want you to know that I'm serious. When the time is right, I'd like to see if what I'm feeling, what I think we're both feeling, is worth exploring. Taylor looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a business card, turning it over to write something on the back. This is my personal number, she said, handing him the card. Not for medical emergencies, those go through the proper channels, but when you're officially no longer my patient, call me. Marcus took the card, a smile spreading across his face. I will. Now focus on your recovery, Taylor said firmly, though her eyes were soft. That's still the priority. Yes, doctor, Marcus replied. As the transport wheelchair arrived to take him to his waiting car, Marcus looked back at Taylor standing in the doorway of his hospital room. Thank you, he said simply. For everything, she nodded, a small smile playing at her lips. Just stay alive, Mr. Grayson. That's all the thanks I need. The 6 weeks of recovery at home were both the slowest and most enlightening of Marcus's life. For the first time in decades, he was forced to slow down, to delegate, to trust others with his company. To his surprise, the world didn't end. His COO proved more than capable of handling day-to-day operations, and the forced distance gave Marcus a new perspective on what truly mattered. He kept his follow-up appointments religiously, each one bringing him closer to being cleared and closer to calling the number on the back of Taylor's card. Their interactions during these appointments remained strictly professional, though Marcus caught the occasional lingering glance or hint of a personal smile. Finally, at his 8-week checkup, Taylor delivered the news he'd been waiting for. Your recovery is complete, she said as they sat in her office reviewing his latest scan. Cardiac function is normal, the repair is solid, and you followed all recommendations admirably. I'm officially releasing you from my care. Marcus couldn't help the smile that spread across his face. So I'm no longer your patient, Taylor met his gaze, a similar smile playing at her lips. Technically, no, you'll still need annual cardiology checkups, but those can be with any cardiologist. Our doctor-patient relationship is officially concluded. In that case, Marcus said, pulling out his wallet and extracting her card, now worn at the edges from frequent handling. I believe I have a phone call to make, Taylor laughed. You could just ask me now. Is that proper medical protocol, Dr. Scott? I'm not your doctor anymore, remember? Her amber eyes held a warmth he'd only glimpsed during their chess games and late evening conversations in the hospital. Then, Taylor, Marcus said, leaning forward slightly, would you do me the honor of having dinner with me tomorrow night? Yes, she replied without hesitation. I would like that very much. Their first date was at a small, intimate restaurant in the West Village, far from the high-profile establishments Marcus usually frequented. He wanted somewhere they could talk without interruption, somewhere the focus would be on them, not his wealth or her career. Taylor arrived wearing a simple blue dress that made her amber eyes seem even more striking. As she slid into the seat across from him, Marcus was struck by how different she looked outside the hospital setting, and yet how familiar she felt. No white coat, he observed with a smile. I almost didn't recognize you. And you're wearing something other than a hospital gown or designer suits, she countered. We're both full of surprises. The conversation flowed easily, as it always had between them. But now, freed from their professional boundaries, they delved into more personal territory. Marcus told her about growing up with a single mother who worked 3 jobs to support them, about coding his first program at age 12, about building his tech empire from a dorm room startup to a global corporation. Taylor shared stories of her childhood in Connecticut, her father's influence on her career choice, her struggles through medical school and residency as one of few women in cardiothoracic surgery. She told him about the patients who had changed her, the lives she couldn't save, and the ones like his that had affected her personally. When did you know, Marcus asked as they shared a dessert, the restaurant nearly empty around them, that I was more than just a patient to you? Taylor considered the question. There wasn't a single moment, it was gradual, maybe during our chess games or our conversations about books. You surprised me. I expected an entitled billionaire who thought the rules didn't apply to him. And instead you got an entitled billionaire who reluctantly admitted the rules might occasionally apply to him, Marcus joked. Taylor laughed. Exactly. But more than that, I saw someone who cared deeply about his work, his employees, the impact he was making. Someone who, beneath all the success and power, was fundamentally kind. She paused. What about you? When did you know? The moment you confiscated my tablet, Marcus admitted. No one had ever cared enough to stand up to me like that, to protect me from myself. As he walked her to her door later that night, Marcus felt a nervous anticipation he hadn't experienced in years. Standing on her stoop, Taylor turned to face him, her expression soft in the glow of the streetlights. I had a wonderful time, she said. So did I. Marcus stepped closer. May I see you again? I'd be disappointed if you didn't. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. Instead, she met him halfway, her lips soft against his, her hand coming up to rest lightly on his chest, right over the surgical scar that had brought them together. When they parted, Taylor kept her hand on his chest, feeling his heartbeat. Strong and steady, she murmured. Thanks to you, Marcus replied, covering her hand with his own. You know, Taylor said with a smile, most doctors advise against getting emotionally involved with former patients. And what do you advise, Dr. Scott? She looked up at him, her amber eyes bright in the moonlight. I advise that some rules are meant to be broken, especially when the heart is involved. 6 months later, Marcus stood at the podium in the grand ballroom of the Manhattan Memorial Hospital Gala, the same event where he'd first experienced symptoms of his aortic dissection a year earlier. This time, however, Taylor stood beside him, her hand clasped firmly in his. Last year, I stood on this stage and announced a $5 million donation to the cardiac unit. Marcus addressed the crowd of donors and medical staff. Little did I know that investment would pay personal dividends when the brilliant Dr. Taylor Scott saved my life just weeks later. He turned to smile at Taylor, who squeezed his hand encouragingly. Tonight, I'm honored to announce a new $20 million endowment for cardiac research, specifically focused on early detection and treatment of aortic dissections. The crowd applauded enthusiastically. But more importantly, I'm here to tell you that this experience has fundamentally changed my approach to business, to philanthropy, and to life. Marcus looked out at the audience. We often say that time is our most valuable resource. As someone who nearly ran out of time, I can tell you that's absolutely true, but what matters most is how we spend that time and who we spend it with. He turned to face Taylor fully now, taking both her hands in his. The room fell silent as they realized something unscripted was happening. Taylor, you didn't just repair my heart in surgery, you showed me how to use it properly. Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box, dropping to one knee as gasps rippled through the audience. You've made me a better man, a better leader, and a happier human being than I ever thought possible. Will you marry me? Taylor's eyes shone with tears as she nodded. Yes, she said, her voice clear and certain. Yes, I will. As Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger and rose to kiss her, the ballroom erupted in applause. In that moment, surrounded by the medical community that had brought them together, Marcus and Taylor began the next chapter of their unexpected love story, one that had started with a broken heart and led to a life more whole than either had imagined possible.